If you're watching this, you're a nerd. Or at least if you're subbed to a small channel such as my own, then you're probably at least somewhat invested in the idea of analytical videos. So you're probably a nerd. I think what separates a true, genuine nerd from the norm isn't what you like, but how deeply you like it. When it comes to something without a widespread appeal, the amount of effort it takes to enjoy it is greater. Karuta as a sport is nothing if not niche, and once you know what it is, that's not a surprising fact. A match involves a reader saying the first line of a poem while two players race for the matching card. Even at casual play, there's a notable entry barrier. To start really playing beyond a basic level, you have to memorize the 100 poems by their 2 verses. You only really need to know the first few syllables, but even beyond that entry barrier is the skill ceiling, where the idea of quickly taking cards from memorized positions based on hearing is taken to its logical conclusion. These guys move fast. These aspects combined can make the idea of getting into Karuta rather imposing, but at the end of that path, Karuta is still not a professional sport. You might get a scholarship if you're in high school, or you might show up on television if you challenge the master or queen for the title of best in the sport, but that's really it. Karuta requires a huge amount of work to get good at, as anything does, but those who play it must balance it around their school and work, since it's not profitable enough to be a lifestyle. There are other sports this is true of, but Karuta is small, to the point that if you're an adult who wants to play, you're going to be helping with the tournament logistics every so often. If you asked me what my favorite sport was, I'd tell you none, because I'm a loser. But if I really had to pick one, I'd probably pick Karuta, even if I've never seen a match of it played outside of Chihayafuru. Because the world of competitive Karuta, even through this lens, feels populated by people who play Karuta for a mixture of 2 reasons. They want to be the best and they enjoy it a whole fucking lot. Expressing that idea in its purest form is none other than the main character Chihaya. I cannot stress enough how utterly perfect Chihaya is for this series. I mean, her name's in the title. Chihaya literally means passion, while furu is intended to be the English word full, thus passionful, or full of passion. And holy shit is Chihaya full of passion for Karuta. Everything she thinks about seems to fall back into Karuta. She takes up track in middle school because starting a race with a shot of the pistol needs a quick reaction time. While she wants to become the best female Karuta player as a queen, she also wants to become a teacher so that she can return to high school and act as an advisor to a Karuta club so she can further participate in the sport by bringing up new players. And she's just dumb enough to think that she can balance her grades, her club, and her own path to the top without really doubting herself. That bullheaded, pure passion and love for Karuta are immensely important for the audience. Especially with Western viewers, someone getting into Chihayafuru isn't likely to know the first thing about Karuta. But in experiencing the introduction to that world through someone who comes to have an unparalleled love for it, it allows the audience to feel some of that interest, and ideally become invested themselves. Because Chihaya's passion is utterly infectious. Several times she ends up against an important rival, a former queen burdened by the expectations of those around her, a potential queen only shooting for the title due to support of her friends rather than any actual desire of her own, or even the queen herself, bored of being so overwhelmingly strong, considering going easy against an injured opponent just to make things more interesting. When they face Chihaya, her boundless will to win, no matter the odds, in turn has them putting in all they have. Not only does it push forward the themes of the series, but enhances the story by making the matches that much more intense. When Chihaya's passion makes things more difficult for her, we're more invested in the matches as the greater her struggle, the more satisfying the victory, however small. But that's within the world of Karuta, because as she tries to share her interests with those outside of that bubble, she runs into exactly the kinds of problems you'd expect from the unexpectedly intensive sport. When Aruta, that weird kid in her class no one pays any mind to, gets Chihaya into Karuta, she too becomes ostracized. Even though at this point the whole class is gearing up for a Karuta tournament, because those two have separated themselves by liking it at a level which the others don't, they've outed themselves as being, well, weirdo nerds. And Chihaya being the weirdest nerd comes as a detriment initially as she tries to use her passion for Karuta to get Komano and Kana to join the club in the first season. The two of them have no real interest in competitive Karuta, but in learning about it, they eventually find their own reasons to enjoy it. Kana loves traditional Japanese culture, and initially sees competitive Karuta as something that strips away what she sees as the appeal of the poems used in the game. Their meanings and contexts, the rich language, all torn away as competitive Karuta players focus on only those first few key syllables. But as Chihaya reaches out to her, Kana's new angle allows her to find a whole new way to enjoy and appreciate Karuta. And that in turn makes her better at it, as associating the cards with their poems allows her to more easily memorize them, taking steps into overcoming a personal weakness of hers, while Kana is able to use the opportunity to spread a love of something she enjoys. But she only joins with some stipulations, such as the insistence on wearing traditional clothing and having the club memorize the entire poem rather than just the first few syllables. There's a selfishness there in her demands, but there's a selfishness to all of the club members. Komano joins the club because the mental aspects of karate might improve his studies. Tsukawa wants spotlight so he can impress his younger brothers, even if he has to try and sneak his way into playing. Sumire's selfishness is perhaps the strongest initially, as she's fairly open about her relative disinterest in karate, even after she's already joined the club. Because she's not there for slapping cards around. She has a target, desiring Taichi as her boyfriend, which turns out to be a more difficult task than learning how to play competitive karate is. When she and Tsukaba join the club, it's alongside 18 other students, Tsukaba being the only one among them with any prior interest in karate. But though she doesn't care for karate, she stays when 18 others leave. But because she continues on in the club due to her love, she embodies the themes of Chihayafuru as much as any of the other characters. It's the exact same reason Taichi is in the club even though he doesn't really like karate either, which is why Sumire's attempts to get Senpai to notice her by getting better at karate fail to do so. Though Sumire is more of a filthy normie, she ultimately sticks with the club because she's more of a weirdo nerd than most, even if it's over romance instead of karate. The characters are just so deeply invested in something that most probably wouldn't even give a second thought, and they're willing to make compromises for it out of that love. The way the characters might attach themselves to various poems is also a form of expression in a sense. They might like the poems because they care about their deeper meaning, because the syllables are present in the name, or even because it was a winning card in a clutch moment. Watching the characters of Chihayafuru put in a huge amount of effort for little more than a bit of recognition and personal satisfaction is something I find myself connecting to deeply. I haven't put as much time or effort into what I do as Nishida has, but seeing him wrestle with the fact that despite all his work, he's still just second-rate, it hits. Seeing the moments where those in the background balk at the mere idea of competitive karate, after we've seen countless matches with the soundtrack, direction, and characters having done so much in showing how impactful and intense a match can be, hearing those skepticisms becomes frustrating in ways I've felt when I realize how my own hobbies and interests might be just as easily dismissed. How can you get so mad over a cartoon? I'll show you fucking how. Oh boy, I'll show you. The ways I connect to art just aren't relatable to many of those in my life. But those connections are something I find myself getting through this community. I do like making videos and I plan on it for the time being regardless of the size of my channel, but if you want to prolong my need for steady employment to help me make videos for longer, I've finally gotten a Patreon going. It's not flashy, but every dollar counts, and if I didn't earn yours this time, then I hope you subscribe so that I can work to try earning it next time.